Hi, I'm Kevin,
And I'm Amanda.
and we are serving up
All that jam. A lighthearted look at the weekend jam bands.
where we break down the jam scene's biggest stories,
Talk new bands.
upcoming tours,
And show reviews. A little laughing, some hot takes, and an always positive message for the community.
Week of March 25th, 2024. Zac Najor.
Welcome back to All That Jam, where music has no limits. This week we have a flashback interview with Zac Najor, formerly of the Grey Boy All-Stars, Zebonics, and lots of other stuff. We'll get into that. We touch on everything from 8 tracks to being an educator. We also have our top 3 stories of the week coming up. Last week we got to catch up with Matt McDonald from Perpetual Groove about their latest studio work and more. And we also got to speak to Rocky Lynn, who is a country artist. We're stepping a little bit outside of what we're doing, but music has no limits. He has a documentary coming out on Amazon in April, and fascinating story. He went from the LA metal scene to the Army to Nashville. And this documentary turned into a look for his parents because he was adopted. So fantastic story. Look for both of them soon as standalone episodes. I watched some Spafford, surprise, and they continue to amaze. They look better. They just keep, they just look like they're getting better with each jam. And I had a heartbreak, Amanda.
Really?
There's no heroes left, I feel like, in the world. Neil Young went back on Spotify, and I tweeted out, at least Joni Mitchell didn't. Well, that only took a week to change, and I don't know. What are you thinking about that?
Yeah, I know, right? Because we were just talking about Neil Young last week, and yeah, the pendulum swings yet again, I guess. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to think about getting upset with somebody like Joni Mitchell, but at the same time,
Joni.
I think it's just a statement on how things are. More, to me, it's a little more meta. The fact that as much as these giants are legitimately or have tried, at the end of the day, right now at least, that's where they ended back up for various reasons.
But so do you take a stand in the first place then? Why bother to take a stand in the first place if you're just, or you make it a point and you're going to go back anyway, which seems to betray the veracity of the action in the first place,
Yeah. I mean, I guess it would be dependent on the people involved. For Neil Young and Joni Mitchell, who are not afraid and have never been afraid to speak their mind, I don't think anything like that is ever a wasted effort. If it made anyone else even think about what these streaming platforms do, then that's a win, even if maybe behavior didn't change that much.
Right.
I think that, just like at any point in history, you could say it's unprecedented times. There's just things changing every day.
Well, there is, who David Hume is?
Yes.
He's a skeptic. He was the founder of skepticism. After a meeting once of skeptics to proclaim skepticism as a philosophy, he said, nonetheless, we all left by the door and not the window. And I feel like this is kind of that thing. They didn't leave by the window. Nothing changes. I get the point of it. And I feel like the greatest hero we've had in the past few years is Robert Smith. He took a stand against Ticketmaster, sold out that whole tour, and everybody got in, even if you only had $30.
Who would have ever thought? But, so the Enlightenment thing, right? Like, I just have to say, this is totally an aside, but it's a little convenient to be a skeptic, isn't it?
It is.
Like contrarians. I could totally rock a contrarian outlook any day of the week. But, I mean, in all seriousness, though, I know what you're talking about. And sometimes it's really difficult to try to see beyond all this stuff that's happening on a day-to-day basis. And then you realize people are still out there, whether it's music or other things, trying so hard in their corner of the world to do things differently or make something beautiful.
Right.
So, we talk about this, it's, art versus artist. In this case, I would say it's art and artist versus monolith or something like that.
Now, a couple weeks ago, Bobby canceled. This is a little foreshadowing because we're going to talk something about Wolftrap. Bobby canceled playing with the National Symphony. Last week, it was announced there are going to be 10 more Dead and Company Sphere shows going into August. Did you hear about this?
Yes. And, part of the situation in general, I think, these days is it's such a chessboard, right? So I would imagine, as an artist who's touring on a regular basis, you need to keep that calendar full, but then you also at the same time know that things are going to come up, and especially these extended runs, that's different than popping in a date somewhere here or there. This is something else entirely, the production, the whole thing. So yeah, I guess, they were given that offer. It's a lot of dates. I mean, really, what they're going to be doing, that's quite a bit of time they're going to spend out there.
Does it take away at all from the magic of it when it is the 9th weekend that they've been doing it?
Yeah. I have 2 words for you, Celine Dion. I don't know. Like, these residencies, they're popular for a reason. They're successful usually for a reason, besides the fact that the artists who usually do something like that are so well established that they're being asked. I don't know what magic there would be anyway for me at this point. I think I love it. It's great, but that sparkle, it's not going to be there for me at this point.
The thing with Selena Diaz, oh my God, I just butchered the poor woman's name.
Can we just keep that?
The thing is, she does the same set list. It's a very planned show. With the Grateful Dead, you would expect if they were doing however many shows this is now, 30, 40 shows, that there would be these incredible set lists and bust outs and things like that. And from everything that's been hinted towards, it's going to be the same songs every weekend. Maybe in a different order, but it isn't going to be completely open. You aren't going to get a CC Rider appearing out of a He's Gone jam just because the band found it,
Right. Well, and actually, so Kev, if it's cool, I know that we just talked to Kendall Street Company, and, they're doing amazing things. And we talked a little bit about some of their residencies in their home state of Virginia. And one of the cool things that Jake said, right, was it gives us the opportunity to flex a little, get creative. We have all these different moments, every week where we can try stuff out. But yeah, that whole Sphere situation is so different. And there's so many more dependencies that I can't imagine how it would work. I mean, hopefully, maybe they would have 3 or 4 kind of rotating, unique set lists, but I have no idea what that would take to get all the visuals.
Right. Well, I think Fish is going to answer a lot of questions in a couple weeks.
Yes, they are.
We may have some better look to what Dead and Company are going to do.
Oh,
so.
man.
Anyway.
I'm excited. Of course, I can't wait to hear how those shows turn out, but I'm also just really curious to see how Fish fans react to the venue, react to being in Vegas for that long. I mean, the whole thing is going to be, I'm fascinated. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. All right, we mentioned Wolftrap. Why don't we find out why we mentioned Wolftrap with
the top 3 stories of the week.
3 stories for this week. I will start with some news that just came out of the Trey camp. Just last week, it was announced that Trey is going to perform with the National Symphony Orchestra in Virginia. That's going to be in late June. And I was really happy to see this because it's been about 7 years since he's done something like this. Right. It didn't seem like it had been that long, but it
got canceled over COVID. He was going to do it in 2020, and the couple got canceled. Maybe in Boston with the Boston Symphony or something.
Yeah, because I love when he does things like this, whether it's the Beacon shows, with the, you know, everything that they brought in there with the rescue squad to, I mean, just alongside all of these really great performers, you know, going way back. I think that it's been shown, at least in my mind, over and over again, how technical Phish's compositions are, that they might lend themselves to that orchestral setting, you know, in a really cool way. Yeah, I love it.
I've always said that petrichor, that's where it belongs, because you want to hear it exactly like it is on the album. When you go to see Phish, you want to see something improvisational, off the cuff, and petrichor is 12 minutes of exactly what it is. And Time Turns Elastic, same thing. So there are some great songs. Coyote, you know, I know that's shown up with symphonies before. Some of these things just really work in that. And another thing I keep thinking, someone mentioned this to me about a legacy thing, that Bobby and Trey playing with the symphonies and things like that. And, you know, does it legitimize their body of work on some level, that it's become part of classical music, you know?
It's a cool thought. Well, you know, there's a group that's been around for some time called Ilharmonic Orchestra. I actually would love to chat with them for the show. And, you know, they take hip hop, bring it into a symphony orchestra type setting. They have DJs, they've got the lyricist there, but then underpinning it is that classic orchestra sound, and it is amazing. So anything that kind of blends those genres together that you just, from a 30,000 foot view, you would never think should go together.
Right.
And when it's done well, which I think that's another thing too with Trey, at least, I feel like they've always been done really well. But you're talking about a master of production and events and ideas, you know, like that vision is just always moving around, and I think it's so cool. So I can't wait.
Who writes the charts? Is it Hartmus? Don Hartmus writes the charts for a lot of that stuff, right?
I know in the past, yes, has really taken a lot of that on for, you know, for all those different instruments and everything. So I'm assuming it would be the same. I'm so curious of what he's going to do. I guess right now I'm just, anything would honestly make me happy. I'm just going to be that person. Right. I think it's great, but I'm sure that there will be a couple surprises, or maybe they'll bust out, you know, some stuff like they did with the Vermont Youth Orchestra way back in 2000, which still to this day blows my mind, because that's the last thing I ever expected to hear. And there it was.
Have you ever been to Wolftrap?
I have never been to Wolftrap, no.
Caveat: do not smoke weed in the parking lot. It is a federal park. And in '93 at Phish, they arrested a mess of people for partying in the lot. And Steely Dan, I've seen like 20 shows there, and I've seen people get popped at everyone. So don't do that. But with vapes, maybe not. The coolest thing about this place, though, is you can bring in a bottle of wine and a picnic basket with your crackers and cheese and a blanket and throw it out on the lawn and sit there and have a picnic while whatever band you're seeing is playing. So I'm planning on getting a big picnic basket and a jug of wine and heading in and sitting on the lawn and listening to some Trey with the symphony.
Wow, that sounds like an amazing evening. And for anyone that's interested, pre-sale is happening tomorrow, March 26th. There's a code, I think it's Harry Hood, that people can use. The general on sale, I know, is Friday. So yeah, you know, it'll
Maybe
be
foreshadowing.
I guess so. Just as I was reading, I'm like, that's interesting. That one would work as well, Kevin, I think.
I will be looking to get a ticket the week before.
Yeah. You know, living out here has really changed my whole philosophy for buying concert tickets. I just don't. Locally, I really don't buy tickets anymore.
Which sucks, because we should be buying the tickets ahead of time. Not with Trey necessarily, but if you're going to go see Litz or Kendall Street Company or whoever the local band is, you buy it a week before. You know, their manager's happy. The venue's like, oh, actually people are buying tickets. The venue stops stressing on them.
Oh, yeah. And
we're not going to have anybody.
Usually a week before I'm good, but the on sale, and I'm thinking more of like
6
Philly
months ahead of
Springs
time?
and all that. I can't commit, Kev. Just can't do
I
it.
can't.
I don't
ELO is going to tour. Jeff Lynne, bunch of studio guys. Probably will be tight. They'll nail the studio cuts exactly like they should. Are touring only $75 from what I hear, but one of those things I will think about the week before instead of, I need to. Oh my God, I can't miss this, even though.
That's how it works. So fun news, and I love how Trey was able to kind of fit that in between Tab and Fish Summer Tour too. I mean, perfect timing.
Trey's model one day is going to be a couple weeks of symphony shows, couple weeks of solo shows, couple weeks of Tab, couple weeks of Fish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's going to be his year, the all new Trey review.
I love it. All right. Well, let's see what else we have for stories this week. We're going to get, I guess, consistently more corporate as we go along. All right. Tennessee. Let's talk about Tennessee. I was just in Nashville. I'm still reeling from just the overall scene there. It's pretty wild. But late last week, the governor of Tennessee, Bill Lee, signed legislation. And the purpose of this is trying to protect songwriters and performers against artificial intelligence, or the potential dangers, which is interesting, right? Potential is, I think, the key word here.
Bill Lee is a Democrat, isn't he?
Yeah, it's in, and Tennessee is one of those states where...
Oh, I would not want to live in Tennessee. Sorry to all our Tennessee people.
I know, right? Oh, wait a second, Kev. He's a Republican.
Oh, okay. Well, good.
Yeah. Sorry.
Kentucky's the guy who has the Democrat for the governor.
Yeah. So he's a Republican.
So basically, I mean, you can see Tennessee with Memphis and Nashville. I mean, Nashville is the songwriting capital of the world, maybe. Mm-hmm. You got to look out for people.
Well, right, because that is the dominant industry. And there is a statistic out there that they employ more people in Tennessee in the music industry than any other state. So putting that against LA, New York, this is what's important. And as, we're thinking about re-elections, the cycle, even for a Republican governor, you still have to work with the people that are there pouring money into your state. So
entertainment. Well, this, you were in Nashville. Every bill had an entertainment tax. If they had somebody in the corner playing an acoustic guitar, there's a lot of money. You all of a sudden have computers writing all the songs. All those people disappear because they no longer can live their dream out of maybe having one of these songs show up on a Garth Brooks record.
Right. Well, right. And so actually, that's a good point. And I'll add to that a little bit. Tennessee is one of only 3 states where someone's name, photographs of them, and a likeness are considered a property rather than a right of publicity. So that in itself is very unusual. And now with this new legislation, vocal likeness is added to that list. Oh. So I guess in a way there was some kind of precedent, or at least something complementary that had been in place. So it's an interesting thing, right? Because
the voice thing, though, I feel like we're sliding down a slope at 900 miles an hour with that one, because I hear singers like Journey. I saw a video of Journey recently from a month ago, and that guy that they got from a karaoke cover band singing Journey sounds just like Steve Perry. Is he violating Steve Perry in Tennessee?
So there's got to be... No, I think that there's got to be room for that, because you can't walk down Broadway in Nashville without hearing things like that pouring out of, all the open air windows.
Right.
There is a civil action that's a part of this legislation. So maybe this will help explain that. People can be held liable if they publish or perform an individual's voice. So it has to actually be that person's voice without permission.
AI creates Garth Brooks' voice and does a song.
Yes. So I think it leaves room, because that would take out a ton of the music that they've got in every corner and crevasse in that
So
state.
let me ask you this. How does this affect the story that you did a few weeks back, maybe a few months back, about Spotify altering songs a little bit? Is
Mm-hmm.
this illegal in Tennessee now?
Right? I guess by the letter of the law, it could be. And so these implications, because this is all so new, I think that there's going to be a lot coming out, as this really takes effect. It's such an interesting thing to get bipartisan agreement too, culturally. And of course, economics is going to drive so much of that. But, there was unanimous approval.
How far behind? I mean, this legislation is cutting edge, right, in America. How far behind are we, though? Like, should the legislation that they're going to introduce 5 years from now be what's being introduced today?
Well, it makes me think about just the internet in general, right? And if we all take our time machine back to the lovely time of the 90s, the mid to late 90s, and I believe that at that point in time, there were some very similar concerns in the sense of this thing is going to come at us and it's going to really disrupt things. Right. And there was a lot of concern and fear. So I don't know. I think people are trying to do what they think they need to do to be proactive. I don't know if anyone's prepared for really all the ways this can be done, right? But doing something, making that attempt, I have to respect it in a sense that people are talking about it.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good thing. AI is a huge concern. And I tell you what, the more I think about it, the more I am hoping, I want to believe that it can be a tool. Mm-hmm. And that it isn't going to be, it's going to be how you use it. Either we become a tool of it or we use it as a tool.
Right. And, oftentimes it takes a very notable event or a circumstance for things to really change. So another little factoid about that Tennessee legislation, that came about in the 80s as a result of all the fallout from Elvis Presley's estate and people just scrambling to get, there were so many legal battles over these unauthorized uses of his name, his likeness, right? Because people were arguing that he's dead, therefore that's public domain. And Tennessee passed this Personal Rights Protection Act in large part to try to deal with that cluster.
Elvis.
Yeah. So thank you, Elvis.
Elvis does, much like the Queen used to in England, Elvis represented the United States to the world for a long time.
Right. So that's something that I really would never have thought of. But when it happens, because it's not an if, it's a when there is a really big time, situation unfolding, you're going to see the scramble. I'll be curious how over time, how Tennessee, since they've already got some experience trying to protect these types of rights, maybe they're better suited in a way to enact this, but they're going to be up against some really interesting and probably very confounding scenarios.
They're going to come up against copyright law, though, and what's fair use and things like that.
Don't even get me started on copyright law. That we need to have just a whole special on just copyright and Disney and Lucas. Anyway, all right, we're going to move on. We're moving on from that. Third story. Actually, you know what? This is perfect. So, Apple, another company that we love to hate in a lot of ways, they were just fined about $2 billion by the EU for basically hindering music streaming competition. I would say as a headline, one of the least surprising headlines that I've seen in a while, but because of the sum of money involved and just because of the shadiness of it, and I'll explain a little bit, wanted to just chat about it and see what you think, Kevin. So I don't know how in this day and age anyone could really be shocked, but what happened and has been happening.
There's gambling going on here.
There's so much happening. So Apple, they don't want people getting their apps from websites or other places, of course, they want people getting their apps.
They get 20%, right? They get 20%, I think.
30%, yeah, something like that. That's this fee that's charged, through the App Store. And according to the EU, what's illegal about it is basically making it next to impossible for people to find out otherwise or learn where else they could get that very same app that isn't in the App Store. And we're all trained. I'll speak for myself. First place I go, I don't even think that there might be somewhere else that I could
go to iHeart's website and download it directly from iHeart's website, and then Apple doesn't get their 20%.
Right. So this is a decades-long practice, at least. And, the EU is saying that millions of people have paid, 2 or 3 euros per month, more than they would have had to pay. And that all definitely adds up when you're thinking about those numbers. But you have this other battle, right, between Apple and Spotify. There was a fine that Spotify had to pay, which is almost $2 billion. So very similar sums of money. And we have these other rules that are trying to prevent these tech giants from just cornering markets, which has already been happening. So it's almost like trying to backpedal and now figure out how do we handle this gigantic, disgusting monster that everyone happens to be like hanging out with all the time, And
you don't.
And I don't know. Yeah.
I used to joke that Microsoft had the country surrounded, but it was really Apple.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I have an Android. I have an S8. I will, full disclosure here, I have an Android Galaxy S8, and it's very old. I bought it for $100 on eBay. I pay $15 a month for cell service for it. So it's completely functional for me. But I'm not invited to Apple chats because apparently I do weird things to Apple phones because I have an Android.
That's right. Oh, yeah, no, I know. iMessage doesn't like you very much, just so you know. I don't care what their help pages say. You're not invited. And I'm laughing because I'm sitting here looking at not one, but 2 MacBooks, an iPhone, and an iPad that are all plugged in right now because they all do different things for me. And that is something that sometimes I look and I'm disgusted by myself. And then I say, okay, Amanda, what are you going to do?
I bought an iPad only because it made life easier to deal with Work Plus. Back during quarantine, I bought an iPad, but it was an old iPad. Well, you don't get sucked into the, we're going to give you a new phone. It's only $20 a month for 9 years.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Like your car payments, Well, and honestly, in this case, it's kind of like, okay, it's Shawshank Redemption. I'm going to bring this around. Okay. There's a scene in Shawshank Redemption that I think really defines pretty much all of adult life. And it's the scene where they just have to move the big boulders from one side of the yard to the other and back again for no reason, right? To keep people busy and make people work. And so I feel like a lot of our days, if we let them, can be spent that way. In this case, it's moving billions of dollars between Spotify and Apple, and then Apple and Spotify. So right now, Spotify is super stoked, right? They put out a really great statement that it sends a powerful message. Okay, fine. And then in the middle of all that are the rest of us just watching the boulders getting moved from one side to the other.
Spotify has their own troubles in Europe, though. I feel like 6 months ago we talked about that.
They absolutely do. Absolutely. So,
From what they're paying people, right? It has something to do with the pay per stream or something like that.
Yes. And so now that Spotify for this week is not on the hot seat, they're welcoming the fine. Of course you are. I mean, it's almost laughable because most of us cannot conceive of these sums of money anyway.
I think 100,000. That would get me through a while.
Oh my God. I always say 10 grand would change my life. So, and I think a lot of people are like that. So as much as maybe it's hard to wrap our heads around the numbers, the fact is that it's just chess pieces going back and forth, and nobody else is really moving, you know? And I guess that's not the most positive way to end the top 3 stories this week, but
it is because, Noam Chomsky, he was a linguist, and, I'm sure that he upsets a lot of people with what he said, but I saw him speak once, and he said something to the effect that totalitarianism was freedom, because you're told what to do, you're told what to think, and you don't have to worry about any of that. You just get to go and live your life. You go and do what you're told. So,
yeah.
Which is a scary thought.
If you haven't, and I'm sure you have, Kev, but if you haven't, I think it was about a year ago, he wrote about the false promise of ChatGPT. So he's weighed in on this too, as well, about, optimism, because intelligence is, all around us is basically like, you can't do that. You have to stop and really think about things. So, I remember reading that. So that's something that I need to go back and find.
There you go. On our quest to get Carl Denson and or DJ Greyboy on here, you introduced me to Zac Najor. I knew the Greyboy All-Stars. I knew that, the keyboard player. I knew Carl Denson was in it. That was about all I knew. And Zac Najor, you want to tell us a little bit about him and what we're going to hear coming up?
I would love to. I will say there definitely will be a time when we get both Carl and DJ Greyboy on the show. But Zac is one of those people that's just been around, he's done so much. Really great guy. So for me, the Greyboy All-Stars are foundational. I always kind of say it's Medeski, Martin and Wood, Fish, Greyboy just happened to be kind of like the pillars for me of where I started with music. He's been playing forever. He's been in bands that open for big names like Kool and the Gang, etc. He's also this educator, and he's got a really interesting perspective on, giving back and living his life. And so when we had him on, we got into a lot of stuff. And one of the things that was most interesting to me that I really hadn't expected to talk about necessarily was what our scene gave to the Greyboy All-Stars, because they hadn't really considered themselves, like we hear a lot, a part of the jam band community. And Zac's take, without maybe revealing too much, was realistic and practical and very humble, honestly. And I really appreciated the way he talked about it. So I'm excited to get into this. He's one of my favorite people. I've gotten to meet him a couple times, and he's just a fantastic human. So maybe let's get into this, Kev. I know that we are going to maybe start with that jam band label, right? And him explaining his philosophy on that. Zebonics, one of my all-time favorite side quest bands, I guess, if you want to call it that. They're fantastic. And if people have not heard them, there's a bunch of stuff out there that you can find. It's a studio project that Zac started. And so we can maybe get into that and the LA scene a little bit here.
Isn't that all great art, though? Like Van Gogh, he was nothing his whole life, and, now people pay millions for his paintings.
Good point. I mean, I think, so that's why I kind of make the point. That's probably where I get that, that thinking from, even when we released the Zebonics record and I was reading reviews, I heard every once in a while the critic would say something about the jam band scene, and it was not meant to be flattering, the one that rings out is like, as far as jam band music goes, this is top notch or something like that. So, I mean, that's what I mean. It's not a total diss, but it's just kind of like a overall disdain for something. But like I said, I really truly believe that's why you can't say anything negative about it, because it's just been nothing but good. I think it's because we want to be as cool and as sexy as we think we want to be in life sometimes. I don't care about that anymore because I'm almost 50 years old. But at the time, you felt like maybe that wasn't the exact way to exploit that or the exact place. You know what I mean? Like that's what I'm trying to say. But that's meaningless. Now when I look back, I go, well, I'm glad I prioritized for the music above and beyond anything like that. Because,
right.
So that's the way I feel, do it, and I got nothing but appreciation, for it.
I definitely, thank you for sharing all that. And, on the angle of kind of the Zabonics work, and because you had Nigel on at least one or two tunes, there, yeah. And really, I think just great stuff.
Oh, you heard? Did you hear the new album or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, we have a clip out today with chat we had with Nigel, I don't know, a month or so ago. Not even.
No, 2 weeks.
Been 2 weeks. Time. What can I say? Feels like I mean, that as an outfit to me feels like it's got a ton of room to just do a lot of different things. Like how do you see that?
Are you talking about the Zabonics one?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just like something that just, once again, it was an outlet, to be able to do everything that I thought like you never really get to do fully when you're in a band.
Yeah.
I love Carl and playing with him, but even more so, I think for Carl, the Tiny Universe is his outlet.
Right.
So understandably, it's not really a place for you to try to bring in all your ideas, you have to fight rather hard to get any idea in a band situation. I chose to do it in my life. I chose to fight. I chose to say, no, I got to get this song. And I'm always told, I'm going to go on a tangent here, but I'm always told, like, you already brought 2 songs. You don't get to bring in a third one. I'm like, no, but I want, but I have to be told, no, that we've heard enough from you. You know what I mean? I like it because when I look back, I go, I'm glad I fought to get those songs on that record because that's the most popular freaking song on the record, or like, you know what I'm saying? Like, or even with the Grey Boy All-Stars with the song Happy Friends, like I remember that's one song that people ask us about a lot. And that was my tune, you know what I mean? That we brought in. And I remember when we recorded it, somebody put it down. They said, oh, that's definitely the bad song on the record, the sucky song. You know what I mean? I stopped right there. I reset up my drums. We're going to re-record it then, because we had a couple hours left. I'm glad I fought for that. I'm glad I didn't. I mean, some might consider it humble to just like, not think about, what your ideas are or whatever. But I think that there's some things it's worthy to fight, to push things forward because now when I look back, I go, I'm glad I did that. And I didn't just like lay back and just let everybody do their thing. Sorry if I derailed what you were just about to say. I just had to.
I love this. I mean, that's passion for what you do. I think that's the way it should be, to a large degree.
Can I give you a little left turn here about you play at the Viper Room with some guys from Fishbone and Weapon of Choice?
Yeah. We did a couple gigs at the Viper Room. That was so fun because, obviously Fishbone was probably one of my biggest influences. I'm not one of those guys that claims that he listened to Stevie Wonder when he was like 10 years old. You know what I mean? Like I was listening to Rush only, brother. I mean, and it's like Zeppelin sucks. Pink Floyd sucks, only Rush. You know what I mean? And it had to be like that. Like, I don't really think Zeppelin or Pink Floyd sucks, but at the time it was definitely like you stood by your brands. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, well, you invested your money. You had $10 to buy an album. If you bought the Rush album, you were Team Rush all the way.
Yeah, and then you had to stand by the best drummer in the world, of course. You know what I mean? Like, at the time, that's what my perspective was, of course. But I think when I heard Fishbone, genuinely heard, it's kind of like you're hearing something that includes your influences and then something else. And it was like I hate to say gateway, but from that point, like I was determined, I got to figure out what this is and what this is all about, and I'd say that was about like 17 years old. just became like a fishbone freak, you know? So to be at the Viper Room playing, you know, with people like Lonnie Marshall, I mean, the Weapon of Choice was just like the whole LA thing. I mean, I was driving up there for free just to be around those people, you know? That's probably how that gig came about. You hang out. When you hang out in LA, you end up on records and stuff, you know, like, and it happens like you're just hanging out and then like, hey, who's standing next to you right now? You know, hey, can you tell them to come over here? You know, and I mean, I got to play on a Weapon of Choice record that way. When Stevie Salas has also helped me, Stevie Salas helped me get on that Viper Room gig, which, I mean, Guns N' Roses was coming to watch us, and you know, the people in the band and stuff. That's just that's blow away. You know, I think that was probably more of what you would think of as like the experience you would have in the music business. You know, but do you know Stevie Salas, by the way?
I do not. I saw that you had played with him as a list of people you'd played with.
Did you see that Netflix documentary, The Rumble, about the Native Americans who rocked the world? You should watch that. And I hate to should you, but you'd really like that one. And he would be a great guy on your show too. But he used to play with Rod Stewart and all these Parliament and all these people. Terrence Trent D'Arby, he was with him and stuff. But
what instrument?
He's a guitar player, Stevie Salas. I mean, that was the closest brush I had to any kind of rock star stuff going on because he lived in Hollywood. I mean, Slash would be sleeping on his couch when I was sleeping in his bedroom, you know, like, you know, he had a room in the Hollywood Hills and stuff. And like, that was I loved kind of getting that experience that. But you mentioned the Viper Room. I think when you're like in that scene, that's when you feel like, man, I'm like in the center of like everything that could happen. You know what I mean? But you're only making $25 a night, and that because they literally, if you don't have a name, they'll just take all the money and just like they won't even consider it. Like they're like, yeah, you got to, because you got to pay your dues. You know, like maybe they sense that you know. Anyway, you get the idea. Yeah, that was fun though.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so we actually have 3 parts to this interview with Zac. So we're going to get into the second kind of major piece of this interview. But before we do that, I want to share with everyone, of course, that we are on social media at All That Jam Pod, also on YouTube. So make sure that you are subscribed there. You can find us anywhere you get podcasts. We usually share our directory link, but wherever you listen, you can find us. And then also allthatjampod.com. So definitely take a look at all those. And, you know, Kevin, the second part of the interview with Zac, he was really, really, I think, open and shared a lot and just had a great kind of philosophy about things. So he's going to be talking to us a little bit about Rare Sounds, kind of as its own genre or label. And then we get into some technology, specifically talking about 8-tracks. So let's take a listen. Now, I was just thinking back. This was, I think, coming right out of quarantine, or I should say like the immediate throes of quarantine, maybe fall 21. You were out here in Denver, which is where I'm based.
Yeah.
And you and Eddie and, you know, y'all did the Rare Sounds shows at Cervantes, which for a lot of us was our first like indoor show.
Yeah.
You know, in quite a while. And Kevin hears me say this all the time, but I was doing merch that night and was there both nights, the whole night. And, you know, the crowd was just like so amazed to be there, number one, and then hear all that. And I know you all had put out an album.
Yeah.
I was just, you know, is that something that's ongoing or is that more of a, you know, as time permits, you all get together? Because it was fantastic.
Well, Robert kind of messed that up because playing with Roger Waters now, you know?
Right on. Yep.
But, you know, we do have Chris Spice, did I say that right? Spice, Chris? Help me out here. Do you know Chris? How did we say his last
name? Just start over and say Chris. We got Chris. And
Chris.
Then we'll just roll with it.
Let's roll with Chris. Well, he plays a lot with Eddie and stuff in his other group. he covers it. I mean, it's great. We do have a gig in September, I think, with the Rare Sounds, and I think we've added a singer for that too. So it's ongoing here and there. I noticed Eddie is just booking himself all over the place. So it's like, I think he has a group in San Diego. He's got a group in LA, which is fine. You know what I mean? But
he's a busy man. I actually saw him out here a week ago with the newest, or one of the newest outfits, the Lucky Strokes, and he had a country western shirt on, and his hair was a little messy.
Maybe he'll find his way into the, like the big time. You know what I mean? Like through that. I don't know.
He was great. I did a triple take when I got up there. I was like, wait a second.
Yeah, they're pretty cool, and I've watched some clips of them. That's pretty cool. I hope that goes some. I hope that does something.
Yeah, they have some good energy. But I think I love and Color Red does this a lot too. Just bringing together really great artists to make cool music. And I feel like as a label, they're really open to projects that may be a one-time thing. It could be something that happens, frequently, and they're not afraid to kind of get in there and just make awesome music.
Yeah. I mean, it would be great to do that again, and then the group's called the Rare Sounds. And I think that corresponds with the Rare Sounds collection that he has. Like,
Yep.
But I wonder when that thing's going to be printed out, because that's a pretty good album. You know what I mean? I'd like to hear that. I know that everything's slow right now with vinyl stuff, like getting it. So, I mean, that Ebonics record that we did was recorded in 2016, I believe. So that's just taking some time for that to come out. But
Adele's fault. It's all Adele's fault. It's all Adele's fault.
Is it Adele? What did she?
Yeah, she took all the vinyl at one point. Like, people couldn't get vinyl for 6 months because her last album, they took all the vinyl.
All the licorice, huh? They got it all.
Well, that's why you all did the. I know at one point Grey Boy did a cassette in the last couple years too. I think it was it Get a Job? Yeah, on cassette. So you're seeing that a little bit here and there now. For
8 tracks too. Well, DJ Grey Boy puts out 8 tracks.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty old school right there. I don't know if you can't get close to that.
I got DJ Grey Boy's new 8-track. I got to run up to Goodwill and find an 8-track player.
Oh man, a radio station I used to work at. I was an undergrad, and it was a local community radio, and they had all the 8-track stuff still, and I didn't realize at that time that maybe wasn't the most modern equipment. This was like late 90s, early 2000s, so you still saw them. Yeah. I just thought that's what it was. I had no idea. Reel to reel. I'm like, is this not current?
Yeah, well, I think Grey Boy himself has vans. He has the old vans.
Yeah,
a lot of them have 8 tracks in them. So I think it's like there's a club, people who have vans, and that's where they would listen to it in their old van, with the paneling and the carpet.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a couple that look like spaceships too. He's got some. Have you seen some really funky looking vans? Like
I've seen on his Instagram feed.
Yeah.
My stepdad had one that had dragons painted on the side of it. Had the little port window in the back, was the only window, red velvet inside.
Yeah.
Hot.
Yeah, that's the vibe for sure. You know what I mean?
I'm not sold on 8 tracks. I used to have Zeppelin 4, and Stairway to Heaven was cut into 2 tracks. It was on side 1 and side 4 or something like that, and very frustrating, especially when you're younger. All right, So we got a little bit more about coming up with Zac, your authentic voice, which I love, and then him being an educator, which I know is close to Amanda's heart there. But let me tell you a little bit about this week coming up. Tomorrow we have a short history of the Kitchen Dwellers. They're out on the road. They're doing big things. They have a new album out, so you want to check that out. Wednesday, John O'Manson on his studio, The Kitchen Sink, and bands that have come through there, KT Tunstall, Mother Hips. And we also got into a little bit about his live shows. He had played with Blues Traveler last fall. On Friday, we have On Thursday, we have getting to know Nathan Womack. What do you got about Nathan Womack? This is somebody you brought to the table for us.
Yeah, I've known Nathan for a little while now, and he owns a record label out of Seattle called Wax Thematic that has a ton of international artists on it, very eclectic music. They do funkways. That's how I found them years ago. Nathan moved to China a little while back and has been DJing there and doing music stuff there. So we actually got to talk a lot about his kind of new adventures, what he's doing out that way, and also some of the artists that he's currently working with. So yeah, that was a great one.
The next day we get deep with John Spignassi and Scott Murkowski. Scott, you will know from Mike's band and from the infamous Max Creek. Pretty neat stuff there. And then rounding out the week, we have Joe Winograd, who is a poster artist, and fascinating. We get into a little bit about what I would call the work of art in the age of digital reproduction and his working with Dogs in a Pile and the Disco Biscuits. So make sure that you come check that out. There are going to be some changes. We're going to be getting a little bit longer and not every day, because after 13 months now, it's tough putting out stuff every day.
That's an incredible run, and we're not going anywhere.
Right.
But you know what? It's funny to think about scaling back, still doing more than,
most people are doing,
than a lot of people would be able to do. But I'm excited for that, and I think it's going to be a great way to hone in a little bit.
We do a lot of catch-ups now.
Mm-hmm.
We have so many people we've spoken to, and we've gotten their origin stories out there and their philosophy on music and improvisation and studio and stuff. Now we can go back and be like, what has your last year been up to, and get the good stuff like we did with Kendall Street Company earlier. So, all right, let's jump back in with Zach. Your authentic voice, being an educator. We'll see you in a minute. Let me ask you, you've mentioned, getting songs in with Carl Dents and these other people, some one-offs you do. How do you maintain your personal voice going into these different musical contexts?
I think, you mostly have to go in. The last thing I did, me and Carl, I did a record with Carl about 6 months ago that's going to be coming out. Hopefully that's not betraying anybody's, recording release schedule information. But one of the things that I did for the pandemic is just start practicing a lot. And this might sound like a little drummer nerd type, stuff, but I think that at a very young age, I kind of turned away from trying to be like a technically good drummer in order to be like Mr. Groove or whatever, or like to be able to be in a band and make everyone happy, or do what you're supposed to do, quote unquote. And I think in the last year, in the last 2 years with the pandemic, I did get a practice pad drum set, and I started practicing a lot. And looking at all these great drummers that you see now on social media that are just blow away, amazing drummers, of George Porter's drummer, how dope he is and stuff like that. Adam Deitch, I got to go spend some time with him we spent the day together about a year ago. When we went out to play the gig you were talking about, I got to hang with Adam. I've known Adam since he was a teenager, but to sit there and play alongside him and see what the younger dudes or what the cool people are doing nowadays, it just really inspired me. And I think what's changed for me is instead of worrying too much about writing songs and getting them into a session, because that's real tough business sometimes, because when you're trying to push your music on somebody, you get so much pushback for that, because people want to do their own thing. And I think even with Carl, he does, it's his outlet. So he's not really looking too much for somebody to tell him what to sing or do. So what I do now is I just really, what I did, I locked myself in a room before we were recording the album, and I just soloed for an hour over the music that I was about to record. And I felt like I kind of made a really great connection just with playing the drums and keeping everything to the drums, you know what I mean? And I think from here on out, it would be wise for me to just work on that. So like if I do something like, I can just like have my voice as a drummer. Because the conflicts that arise when you try to have voice through, like, I have this song I would like to do. Because let me tell you, I mean, even those records that I did, it's very hard for me to get a band to play one of those songs. Like, I can't explain it. It's harder than people think, I mean, even if you have Grammy participation on something, it's like, you would think that, sadly, people have to be reminded of that. You know what I mean? Like, may I remind you that, and then of course, how do you come across then? If you're trying to persuade people to embrace maybe your repertoire or whatever. For the most part, a band wants to do what just is working for the band intuitively and these kinds of things. So I think it's wise for me, like, just to kind of focus on just like learning how to play more stuff that I want to be able to play. You always get to play a drum solo at times and being able to do more there. And then you still play the grooves and stuff when you do that. And I think the big picture has always been to be able to do both really good, but it's been quite a journey, to be able to do that. And now, I'm teaching special education, sixth grade, I got a full-time teaching job, as an ed specialist. And that kind of keeps me just like grounded now, as far as like not really going on the road or anything like that. I have one gig this summer, so, I think also with the new teaching job, there's a great amount of fulfillment in doing something like that. I just finished my first year, and I think that helps me, not need so much, like to do as much, but that's kind of a different subject, but like that's currently, that's what I'm doing now, is being a full-time teacher. So,
are you in a school district?
Yeah, I'm in San Diego Unified School District. And during the pandemic, I started working for Project Room Key, which was for California, feeding a lot of the homeless, during the pandemic. And I really connected with the whole social worker life, of like, and helping people. And I became a teacher, a teaching assistant. And since I have a music degree, I was able to get like this voucher kind of thing to become a full-time teacher, conditional, in the condition that I continue to take classes. So I kind of have like a credential, a voucher for a credential. Mm-hmm. And so it's like an internship, but it's great because it's full pay and stuff like that. And it's in special education. I'm doing sixth grade. It's fascinating, to like, I didn't even graduate from high school until I was 27 years old. Like I was really awful student, everything. I had to do everything really late in life. And so it's cool to be able to use, whatever talents I have to really help, in the special education thing. And, it's been great, I like to do that. So I know that's not a very like musical topic or anything like that. But...
No, we spoke to someone yesterday who teaches also.
Yeah.
So.
Brian Thomas out in Boston, trombonist, has played for decades, and same thing, he's a full-time teacher, and we were chatting because I taught for a little over 10 years, and
nice.
I did the same thing as a middle school English teacher, and I had an English degree, so alternate route or whatever they called it, back then, but same thing. I kind of was able to get right in there and get started, and then take a bunch of the other classes. So I totally respect that path, because you bring so much to your work with kids, and I love that. Like, I think that's a really special thing.
I think we're going to start a drum line too. I'm working on that, but
nice.
It's after school. But so you taught English, huh? So about like the IEPs and stuff like that for the special education. Like I'm the one that like kind of like is the caseworker for all the students with the IEPs and.
All right, wow. That is a huge episode that we've just undertaken here. Make sure that you tune in every day for the time being, and then just best idea is to go and like, subscribe, follow, whatever fun stuff you have. We may be trying to add some video. It's a living organism, and we're trying to do what's best for you, dear listener. And with that, I'm going to say, stay beautiful, but don't stay underground too long. I'll see you soon, Amanda.
All right, Kevin.